In this episode, I add to my pile of sandpaper and I lift up this transmission. Welcome to my channel and welcome to my 1996 GMC Sonoma Minitruck build. If you're new or a recent subscriber, how about I take you back to some of the things I've done on this channel. We built a new frame basically from the transmission cross member all the way back, a custom 4-link triangulated rear suspension, painted the entire frame with some trim-clad and hardener, and installed the Thorbros front suspension. Lastly, started on some body work starting with the firewall and currently doing the interior of the cab. If you missed the last episode, check it out, the link above. I also want to give a big thank you to all of my subscribers. At the time of this recording, I'm at 188 subscribers. I'm hoping we can hit 250 subscribers soon, and if I hit that mark, I'll go into a little bit more history of this truck, of this build, and show some of the modifications I did before I started this channel. And please follow me on Instagram, and I do have a Facebook page where I do post from time to time some of the things that I'm doing in between the videos. So if you want a sneak peek, you can find them there, and the links are in the description below. So we'll continue where I left off in the last episode, which is starting to add body filler to the driver's side of the cab. And stick around to the end of the video where we'll get into what's underneath these covers. Back at it with the body filler, and I'm starting to get used to the smell. I never know how much of this harder to put on, but it seems to work. The way I've been going about this is adding filler, letting it dry, sand it with 80 and 150 grit, add more filler, let that dry, sand it with 150, 180, and 220. But if there's any thick spots, I'll go down to 80 grit to address them. So while I let this body filler dry, I'm going to address some imperfections. And you can see there's some low spots over here, and I could probably put another skim coat of body filler, but I just find with the Bondo that I'm using, it almost like drags some of itself, and I'm looking at an alternative solution to that. Now, is fixing this really necessary? Not really, because the transmission tunnel will be covered with a center console eventually, but my goal, and if you're new to this channel, you might not know this, is I want to be able to drive this truck up and down my street before the end of spring. So I'm not going to have a center console right away, which means this area of the transmission tunnel all the way to the back is going to be exposed. So I want it to look, as good as I can make it. Now the dash itself hangs over here. So if I draw an imaginary line from this point to the far one over there, then anything back is where I want to address some of the imperfections. And the way that I'm going to address that is with some glazing and spot putty. Not sure if it's going to work, but let's try. I had assumed that the color would be white. I guess just apply this on the low spots. This is my first time using this stuff. It flows better than Bondo, which is a nice change. But as you can see, I don't really know what I'm doing here. So I do the best I can. With everything dry, I'm back to sanding. Alright, this is the last little bit of sanding I need to do. Now there might be some other touch-ups, but that kind of sanding is a lot easier. So I'm going to use the blocks that I have, go with 80, 180, and then maybe a little bit finer, but I think after 180 it's going to look pretty good. I have a bunch of bare metal which I need to cover. So I start with cleaning it again. then spraying it with self-etching primer. I wish I had used a full mask because after a while my eyes started to burn. Alright, with all the bare metal covered in primer, my next step is to use some of this brushable seam sealer. I got my brushes and I'm going to go over where the factory seam sealer was, as well other areas, and I'll give it a little bit more of a factory look. This is my first time ever using this product, so let's see how it goes. Let's open this up. Oh wow, it's full. Let's see, that's not bad. I like it. Oh, I'm making a mess. But this isn't so bad. So what I forgot to do, clean it first. Hopefully this is okay, but let me clean up everywhere that I'm going to be putting this on before I continue. So here's a quick tip. This brush was fairly solid with the seam sealer after it sat for over an hour. I dipped it in some acetone and it quickly dissolved. So good tip to keep your seam sealer brushes clean. After I cleaned up all the areas I'm going to put some seam sealer, I get back to it. So I've been making a mess with a seam sealer, then I remembered a video that I saw on Virginia's for Lowriders where Crawford taped up around where he's going to brush on the seam sealer, brush it on, and then pull the tape off. So spending a little bit of time kind of making that channel where I'm going to be putting the seam sealer. And it's taking a long time. I broke it up into sections, and after creating the seam seal channels with masking tape, I carry on with adding the seam sealer. Only a partial disaster, but at least I know how to clean my brushes. Once brushed on, I carefully remove the tape. Okay, I did not want to bore you with doing the driver's side, which is now done. I just need to pull off the tape. With the tape off, I'll let the seam sealer completely dry. Then I'm going to do a little bit of washing like in that area over there. And then I sand everything down, wash it again, mask everything, and then I'll be able to start painting. Well, it's Saturday morning and I'm determined to paint the inside of the cab this weekend. But I still have a lot of steps to do. First off, I need to wash the inside of the cab everywhere where there's dust or maybe older dirt that I didn't get to the first time. Then, according to the primer technical data sheet, I need to scuff everything with 180 to 220 before I put any of it on. So I have to do that. Then clean it again to make sure that all of the sanding dust is gone. Mask everything, then I'll take a tack cloth to remove any dust that fell onto it when I was masking, and then I can lay on the primer. After that, I have considerations for the top coat, but I'll come back and talk through those when I get to that point. I wash the areas that still have dirt or dust with warm water and a bit of soap, and I dry as I go. It's a good thing I did this because looking at the water, it was filthy. While cleaning, I found a couple of rusty spots. So I used a wire brush to remove the rust and brushed on some primer to cover up the bare metal. I also used some primer where the carpet tabs used to be. With that all done, I lightly sand everywhere with 180 grit. I'm about to start masking everything, but before that, let me show you the monstrosity that I built. Because I'm going to be painting in the cab, which means there's going to be a lot of paint just floating in the air, I put a filter in the back window and used a lot of cardboard and tape with a fan to funnel it through. So let's see if that works, but my goal is that it will extract a lot of the paint that's just atomized and get it outside of the cab. So I'm gonna get started with masking and I'll come back when I'm done. Okay, so I have everything masked up, and the way that I've done the doors is I taped along the seams, put on the plastic wrap, laid it down, cut out the excess, And now I can lift it up because I suspect I'm going to have to get in and out of each side while I'm working on it. So my next step is to get everything set up on this table so I can get the gun and paint ready, but I also need to have a game plan. And what I'm thinking is, since this far side is already covered, I'm going to spray along the edges and as far underneath where the dash will go that I can. Do that for 2 coats. And then I can start spraying everywhere that is closer to me. Then I'll move over to the other side and do the same thing. And probably the last thing I'm going to do is the top of the transmission tunnel, because that is probably where I'm going to be putting my hand on so I can lean over and spray the edges over here. Okay, I think I'm ready to pour the primer into the gun. I made sure the gun was set up. It's at probably 24, 25 psi and a kind of a medium spray pattern. I didn't want to go too wide because there's some tight spots, but I also didn't want to go too narrow. So try to hit somewhere in the middle. This, it's said to stir it rather than shake it. So yeah, I'll open it up, stir it a bit, do the part that I hate the most, which is pouring it because it gets everywhere. I'll try that V thing again, see if that works. And then I'll start spraying. I won't be recording when I'm spraying just because I don't want my phone near the spray, and it's going to be tough to see in any ways because I have all the plastic set up. So at least you'll get to see me make a mess while I pour this and figure out how to get these things off. Probably need a small screwdriver. Just put my mask on. All of the paint itself was at the bottom of the can. I stirred it until it was fully mixed. This is a 1K primer, so it's already reduced and ready to spray. The challenge will be getting it into the gun. Already it's making a mess. Forget about that tape trick. More mess. So I try a makeshift spout. I'm getting primer everywhere. Luckily, I found out later that this cleans up pretty easily with some acetone. I end up just going for it, and I finally fill the gun. And here's what it looks like inside the cap mid-spray. It's the next day, the primer's dry, and my next step is to sand it all down with 400 grit and then clean it up. Since I've been doing a lot of sanding and cleaning in this video, I won't bore you with that, and I'll bring you back when I'm ready to pour the paint. Okay, I'm just about ready to pour the paint, and the guy at the auto body supply store said to use this full can and half of this can of reducer. So 2 to 1. To help me with that, I'm going to use this, probably go up to, call it 400 mils, and then add 200 mils of the reducer, and let's go from there. I can feel that some of the paint settled at the bottom, so I stir it up. This time, to help me pour, I picked up a plastic spout. Hopefully this works. I decided to pour a bit less, so I'm going to use 300 mils of paint and 150 mils of reducer. And thankfully it pours well. If you need to pour a paint, I suggest picking up one of these $2 spouts. They're well worth the money. Time to stir it up. And pour into the gun. Time to start spraying. So far looking good, but it doesn't look good for long. Okay, so the next day I took off the masking, and here are my observations. First off, the good thing is from a color match perspective, where the spot welds are, I didn't paint that, but below I did, and it looks like a pretty good match. I did put clear coat along the back in the transmission tunnel because I think they would be exposed, whereas some of the other spots wouldn't, which is why it remains flat. So that's it for the good. The bad is I had the flow rate turned on way too high. You could see it dripped there. There's another spot over here, even some of the back wall. You could slightly see it there. But that's just me learning, and I totally forgot about the flow control. I didn't check it before I started spraying. I was just too excited to do that. So another thing is because the flow was so high, it took longer for some of the areas to dry. And when I applied the clear coat on this surface, you can see it's hazy because it wasn't 100% dry. So I really should have just waited longer before adding it. I don't know if I can polish that out or not. Worst case, this will eventually be covered, and it's just, again, part of the lesson. That's why I'm doing it on the interior, because whatever I mess up, I'll learn from it, and before I move on to doing an exterior panel, I'll have those learnings. You can also see the bodywork on this side obviously is coming through, not anywhere that well, but let me take you to the driver's side. On the driver's side, things are a little bit smoother, definitely got better. And you can see some hazing, and I think this is from the clear coat just atomizing and landing on the paint. Even though I wasn't clear coating this area, it was just part of it. Maybe it wasn't completely dry, so I'm gonna wait a little bit, maybe a couple more days for it to dry a little bit further and see if I can wash some of that off. And lastly, the filter did its job, but when I took it off, it dropped a lot of dust down. Now I started vacuuming some of it, but some of it's not coming off so easily. Again, I don't want to make things any worse, so I'm just going to wait a little bit, let it dry some more, and see if I can wipe that off. And one last thing, I have some excess paint mixed up, so I'm going to paint this and over on the other side where it's primed. First sand it, clean it, and then paint it just with a brush. All right, so I touched up those areas, and I was able to get a lot of that haze from the clear coat overspray by just rubbing a tack cloth over everything. So that worked out really well. So if I were to do this all over again, what would I do differently? And the number one thing is making sure that flow control knob was set properly, because that created two issues for me. The first is the paint runs, and the second, it took a lot longer than it should to dry, which means when I put the clear coat on the transmission tunnel on that flat spot, it came out hazy. And the second thing that I would do differently is spend a little bit more money and buy more clear coat to clear coat everything. Even though I was able to clean up the overspray with the tack cloth, everything would look a lot better if it had clear coat on it. So if you're thinking about spray painting the car yourself, don't be afraid to do that. Learn from my mistakes, but also try it. Learn from it. The worst case, I know it sucks, but the worst case is you have to sand it down again and spray it over again. Now, because I was doing the interior, my worst case came in some spots, and I'm just going to be putting carpet on it. But if it was the same thing on the outside, I would have sanded down all those paint runs and painted over again, making sure that I had the right flow. And again, putting clear coat, enough of it, and maybe definitely better clear coat. So that's pretty much it for bodywork for some time. There is a small spot on the firewall that I have to touch up, but other than that, I'm not going to be touching any bodywork, paint work for at least until the winter. So let's move on to something completely different. All right, who's ready to focus on something that isn't bodywork? I definitely am. For those that follow my Instagram or Facebook page, you already know what is under here, but for everybody else, here's my big reveal. Of course it's an LS, but this is an LS6, and you can tell by the casting number on the head, which is 243. For those that have subscribed and followed the build along the way, you would have seen this already when I took it out of the frame a few episodes ago. I can't remember what number that is off the top of my head. But what I want to do now is actually split the engine from the transmission, because the flywheel I think needs to get machined. And I want to take that to my friend who would know better than I do if it does need to be machined. And I'm meeting him tomorrow, so I got to get that out now. So it looks to be sitting on the belt housing. So I want to get this piece of wood underneath the oil pan, but it's also leaning pretty far forward on this dolly. So I think I'm going to try to bring it back as far as I can, and then put this underneath, and then I can figure out how to get this off. That makes me a little bit more comfortable. I tried lifting up the transmission to put the wood underneath, but that is definitely not going to work. So better to work smarter and not harder, and I used the jack to help. Now I can move on to the bell housing bolts. Because I don't want the transmission to fall when I loosen the bolts, I make sure it's sitting on some wood. I start to remove the bolts, but some are more torqued than others, and while the threads are the same, some bolt heads are 15mm and others are 13mm, which is why I'm using a bunch of different tools. With the bolts out, time to pull off the transmission. I thought the engine was going to fall.
Bad. No return.
And I have no room. Because the camera tripod is right where I want to put it. Woo! With the transmission out of the way, time to remove the flywheel. Okay, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I put this on. I still want to knock the engine off. I did put a block in the front. And I don't want to screw anything up. I'm sure you guys are just saying, pull it off. There we go. All right, so the consensus is to get the flywheel resurfaced. So I'm going to do that, but I'll bring it back in the next episode. All right, I'm going to end things off here. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video. I'm really trying to get to that 250 mark, and anything you can do to help me would be greatly appreciated. Also, follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll see you next time.